my oldest brother was opening up a restaurant. It was opening night, and two other brothers and myself went to the opening night, and we left there 1:00 in the morning, and we were driving home, following a guy that we knew was a drunk driver, because he was weaving all over the road. So he finally weaved too far and hit the guardrail, and his car turned sideways. So we pulled over because we wanted to know if he needed help. And as we're standing on the shoulder, another drunk driver was driving down the shoulder. It was like it was a lane, and I got hit. And we didn't know at the time, but we were on an overpass. And when she hit me, she knocked me over the side, and I landed 40 feet down on railroad tracks. Now I'm in the hospital, and now the waiting starts, right? So I'm unconscious for however long, quite a while, days. And, your parents are just sitting there, your siblings are just sitting there, you're in the bed, you're out. There's all these machines, you're hooked up to everything except the coffee machine. If I could just try to convey how bad this was for me, but with all the back surgery, the metal in your back, all the things you're going through, the pain is just stupid. And it hurt to inhale. And my four buddies come in, and they were there for a couple hours, and all we did was laugh. And there was a guy across the hall in his gown, and they were making comments, and all we were doing is laughing, and it hurt. My ribs were so sore, and it didn't matter. And it was, I guess at that point, that's when I knew that while I knew my life was going to be different, that I was still the same, and my buddies were still the same, and it was a good day for me. So I come home May 1st. The house for me is great, but except for one or two of my buddies that wouldn't let me kind of pull back, but I kind of stayed away from a lot of my friends. At first I thought it was them avoiding me, but in truth I was probably avoiding them. It was a weird time for me in that with my friends, I just didn't feel like I fit in anymore. And the funny part about that is that like I didn't feel like I fit in with people in wheelchairs either, right? That I wasn't like those guys, and now I wasn't like my buddies. And so it was a time that was kind of tough for me. Although, I so very rarely talked about it that I don't think anybody really knew. So now I'm down at the University of Illinois, and Illinois is the birthplace of wheelchair sports, wheelchair basketball. And the guy who's the head of the sports, a guy named Brad Hedrick, he sees me on campus and introduces himself, and he says, "Did you ever play any sports?" And I said, "Yeah, I played 5 sports. I did this, I did that." He goes, "Have you thought about wheelchair sports?" I said, "No." He goes, "Really? Not interested." He goes, "Okay." And he kind of let it go. So then I saw him like a week later. He goes, "Have you thought any more about wheelchair sports?" I said, "No, not interested." And so then I see him a third time, still not interested. I see him a fourth time, and I said, "Look, accounting's a tough major. I don't have any time, and I'm not interested. I don't have any time." And he says, "Do you watch any TV?" And I said, "Late at night I do after I'm done with my homework." And he said, "Well, why don't you watch less TV and instead get some exercise and get some weight off your fat ass?" And I just kind of smiled, and because he was spot on, right? And he said, "Listen, all the guys are playing wheelchair football at the Armory on Friday." He said, "They're going to be there at 5 o'clock. Why don't you just show up and meet them? If you don't want to stay, don't stay. Just leave." I said, "I'll think about it." So on Friday comes, I go to the Armory. The Armory is this big honking field house, right? All these classrooms on both sides, people walk in and out. And at the far end, I see these people in wheelchairs. So I start heading that way. And so some of the players come out to meet me, and we all are talking, introduce ourselves, and talk about where we're from and our majors and all that kind of stuff. So now practice is going to start. And you have a guy in the middle who's got the ball, and there's 2 lines, and people are going out for passes. So the coach says, "Do you want to try this? Do you want to get in line?" I said, "Sure." So I get in line, and it's my turn. I go out like 10 yards. I look back, and the pass was really high, and I just reached up with one hand, and I caught it. And then I just kind of spun my chair around and I flipped it back to the guy and I got back in line. And these students had stopped to watch. And this one kid goes, "Hey, nice catch." And I said, "Thanks." And it was right at that moment that everything that I ever got in sports came back. And it was kind of like my bridge to being back to normal, to bring back to me. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was going from being somebody with a disability or being disabled to being a disabled athlete. And in my head, that meant I was less disabled. In my head, I was separating myself from this disabled. And I liked it. It was a big motivator. It was a big self-esteem thing for me. My life is full of these people who came into my life at the right time, and they all turned into inflection points. They turned into pivot moments for me because of what they did for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Jim Gallo.
Wow. Thank you. When I came in today, Dan gave me this piece of paper. It was his, he said, I'm just going to give you 2 rules today. And see if you can follow these. So I looked at them. The first one said, whatever you do, don't go longer than an hour. Excuse me. And so I said, I think I got that one. So I cut my speech in half. It was good. And then he said, every good speaker starts with a joke. So I think you should tell that joke about the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Said, I think that will go over really well tonight. I won't be doing that. So as you heard, I got my start in wheelchair sports in football rolled into basketball. I took to basketball like a duck takes to water. I couldn't get enough of it. I loved it. I never had a class at U of I that ended after 1 o'clock in the afternoon so that I could spend every afternoon in the gym, which said a lot about my priorities and some of my grades. But my grades were good enough, and so I'm good with that. But as you heard on there, it not only was wheelchair basketball my bridge to what I thought I used to be, but it was also my bridge. Now I'm hanging with guys who have a similar disability, similar lifestyle, similar everything, and now I'm getting more used to that world. And in fact, this is how similar they were. On the team, we had a small team, we had about 9 guys. One guy fell off a 3rd-story balcony. One guy fell out of a 3rd-story window. One guy was motocross, went off a cliff, went 60 feet. One guy was a rock climber. He fell 40 feet, and I went off the overpass. So that's maybe taking similar injuries a little bit too far. So, but anyway, I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I think what I really love the most about it is that so many of the things that I did, starting with wheelchair basketball, for me was all about busting the stereotype of the disabled. So this is 1980, right? So nobody knew anything. The disabled didn't get out very much. Illinois didn't get disabled parking until 1979, just a year prior. So, and even in my career, I've had 300 or 400 clients. Only twice in my career have I seen somebody with a disability that worked at my clients. But as I said in the thing, for me, it was this big stereotype busting, that I was not just going to be some guy in a wheelchair that didn't do anything, stayed home, didn't work, whatever. So started playing wheelchair basketball. I had a good college career. I won awards. I graduated from U of I with my degree in accounting, had my pilot's license, and I came back to Chicago. So I was a December grad, and I came to the Chicago team in the middle of the season. So now almost all the players on the Chicago team, maybe except for one, were all like 10 years older than me, right? But I was the cockiest by a whole lot more, right? And that, as you might imagine, that cockiness got me some really well-deserved hazing. And I was like, wait, like perhaps you don't know who I am. I'm University of Illinois. I got awards, right? I got skills. No, I didn't, not compared to them. So it took me like a good year and a half, I think, to break into the starting lineup. And but one of the things about wheelchair basketball for me is that like a switch turned on for me, that it was something that I could now do, that I could get really good at if I just worked at it. So when we were in high school, our athletic director had a piece of paper taped to the wall above his desk, and it said, "Hard work beats talent every time talent doesn't work hard." So I was never blessed with a lot of talent. In all my years of sports, I was an average athlete. I don't think I had but 1 or 2 all-star games in my life, and my best sport was soccer, which really didn't lend itself to a wheelchair sport. So, but I started working every waking hour when I wasn't at work at my job as a CPA. I worked out all the time. I was either on the track. I put in thousands of hours on the track in my basketball chair, trying to get faster and stronger. I was not, like when a game was in the last 5 minutes of the game, I was not going to be the guy that was gassed. I was going to be the guy that was still could go. And then I spent thousands and thousands of hours on a basketball court, often by myself, often late at night, because I wanted to be good. And so, like, if I got home from work at a decent time, I would go to the club and get on the track. And if I got home later, I'd get on the basketball court at like 9 o'clock, and I would shoot till 11. And if I had a really long day, I would get on the court at 11, and I would shoot till 1 in the morning. So the Wheelchair Bulls, we had, our home gym was in Addison, and I had the keys and the alarm code. So to me, this was my gym, right? And when the Park District closed, it was gym time. I could just go, right? So one time I get there at 11 o'clock at night. I'm with a buddy of mine. One of my friends was a really good three-point shooter, and we'd had three-point shooting contests, and that was how I turned into a three-point shooter. But we come out of the doors at 1 o'clock in the morning. I lock it. I turn around, and the Addison police are right there. And the cops look at me, and they go, "What are you doing?" I have a basketball on my lap. I go, "Shooting." And he goes, "At 1 o'clock in the morning?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got a big tournament this weekend. I want to do well." He goes, "By whose authority can you be in this gym until 1 o'clock in the morning?" And I said, "What do you mean? I have the keys and the alarm code. Whose authority do I need?" And then I said, "You guys, I'm sorry you came out, but I'm tired. I got to go to bed." And that's when I figured it out, right? When you pretend you own the place, you pretty much own the place, right? So, and the other thing is that when you're in a wheelchair, like, nobody questions you, right? Everybody's, like, afraid to offend you, so you could do anything and get away with it, right? So now I'm playing for Chicago. We get adopted by the Chicago Bulls. We're the Wheelchair Bulls. And in my career, I played over 600 games, and I don't really remember that much about actual game time. I mean, I remember some great plays, but like in my career, I have 5 game winners. I can only remember 3, right? And and I had at least that many where my team trusted me to take the final shot, and I missed. And fortunately, I can only remember one of those, but it was a bad one. So, but what I do remember is, one, how I identified myself. Like so many people I thought were identifying me as, that guy in the wheelchair, that auditor in the wheelchair, whatever. And I identified myself as a wheelchair basketball player instead. So one day I'm going through the drive-thru of a bank, and there's these two women behind the glass, and one of them is super attractive, and I had done something. I was a goofball. And so the envelope comes with the money in it, and I know you young people don't know the drive-thrus at banks are, but and it had the phone number of the drive-thru. So I pick up my phone and I call inside, and I watch the woman answer the phone, and she says the bank, and I said, "It's me in the drive-thru," and she looks up and she goes, "Hi." So we started talking, and I drove away, and we're still talking, and after about like 10 or 15 minutes, I asked her out. And she said yes. And so now I have to tell her that, because I'm in the car, so she doesn't know. I'm not going to just spring on her that I'm in a wheelchair. And so what I did was I said, "You know who the Chicago Bulls are, right? And now this is the Jordan days." And she goes, "Of course." And I said, "Well, the Bulls have a wheelchair team, the Wheelchair Bulls. I play for them." And that was my way of, coming clean that I was in a wheelchair. And I'm sure, if those two women that were laughing at me behind the glass, if they, saw each other today, they'd go, "Remember that goofball in the drive-thru?" And the pretty one would go, "Yeah, I married him." So, and he's still a goofball. So, but the other two things about basketball that I remember the most are the relationships that I had, the people that I had, and our time, the Wheelchair Bulls time, with kids with disabilities. So I'll take them one at a time. So the first one, you see the same players. We were one of the top teams in the country. You're seeing the same players at tournaments, and so you get to know some of the things. But on your own team, right, you're traveling for 5 months out of the year, every weekend, and you spend a lot of time together. And there were two guys on the team that I wanted to be the most like. They were the best players on the team. They were the natural leaders, and they're both here tonight. One guy's a guy named Don Vandello. The other one's a guy named Greg Palumbo. So Don is in the Hall of Fame. He was one of the best guards on the planet, right? And the thing that I saw about him is that he was always even-keeled. He never had big highs and big lows. He was always even. And he was so good. And, he'd be coming down the middle, and some guy's trying to guard him, and you just go, "Oh, you poor bastard, you're going to look bad in a minute." And, of course, Don would fake right, go left, score, and we're like, wow, we didn't see that coming. So, but in all of his time and all the times that he made guys look bad, he never once trash-talked a player. He had this respect for the opponent and his teammates and the referees. I had more technical fouls in my first year than he probably had in his career, right? In my defense, the refs suck, right? I did not foul those guys. But he was just that good. The other player, Greg, he's the other side of the coin. He was the vocal leader. He just oozed confidence, right? He could get to a game, take one shot and make it and go, "I'm ready." I'm like, I got to be there a half hour. I got to get warm. Don't anybody open the door and let cold air in, because I had to be warm, right? And these two guys taught me so much, and they'll never remember because they're really old, right? And I mean, these guys know all the words to the songs you hear in elevators. That's how old they are. But Greg taught me two or three things that I will always remember. The one was that we were in the locker room one time about to go out on the floor in a tournament where we were in the finals. And I had mentioned something about hoping that I was going to have a good game. And he said, stop hoping you're going to have a good game and start knowing that you're going to have a good game. And he was right. I mean, and he was that confident all the time. And then the other thing he said, which is something that you can apply to your everyday life, he'd say, like, when you take a shot, if you hit it, great. And if you miss, let it go. You can't dwell on it. You can't let that affect the next shot. In the same way that you can't take a bad day today and affect your tomorrow. So the three of us, we start together. We're often, wheelchair basketball, there's 3 guards and 2 forwards. We're usually the 3 guards. And we played so many years together, and we played together well. And like if somebody was hot, if I was hot, then they would get you the ball. You feed the guy that's hot. And when I wasn't hot, so like you're playing in a game and like you miss your first couple of shots and mentally you're starting to press a little bit, and then, somebody calls timeout and then you come out and you hit your next shot and you're like, great. And then you miss your next 3 or 4. So now it's halftime, right? And you come to the bench and you're pissed and Greg would come up to me and he'd grab me and he'd go, look, you got a great shot, so just let it go. But not tonight, because tonight you're horrible, so just give me the ball. That's a great teammate. But Greg and I, we traveled together, we roomed together, we had breakfast together, we had dinners together, we were always there, and he's like family. He's like a brother to me, and his brother's like a brother, and his sister-in-law is a dear friend, and their boys, I watched them grow up. And like when we had big news in the Gallo house, right? I would call my mom, I'd call my brothers, and then I called Greg, and I said, it's a girl, right? That's how close we were. That's what that got me. The other thing now is, and this is my favorite, is talking about kids with disabilities and our time with kids. So when I die, right, and hopefully I'll go up to heaven and I'll get to be in front of God. I mean, first I'm going to hug my mom and then I'll go to God. Sorry, God, you're going to be second place today. So, and I would say to him, I go, look, I just have 2 questions. My first question is why do kids have to be born with disabilities? Like, what did they do wrong? Who are you pissed off at that these little kids have to pay the price? I'm just not that smart. I'll never get it. And then the second thing I'm going to ask is, like, were you really in a bad mood when you gave us this chicken neck thing? Because what is this for? Like, I don't understand this. So anyway, I have a million stories with kids, and I'm just going to give you 2 of them because I could do this all night, and each kid's story is better than the last. But when we became the Bulls, grade schools would call the Bulls and see if they could get a speaker, and it was often me. So I would go to this school, and I went to this school in Schaumburg, and I get there, I jump in my basketball chair, I'm warming up, the kids are filling up the gymnasium, and they're all going crazy when I hit a shot. And a teacher pushes a little boy in a wheelchair into the gym. So I stop and I go right to that little boy, and I said, how you doing? And I give him knuckles, and I said, what's your name? And he said, Jamie Williams. And I said, Jamie, how old are you? I said, what grade are you in? He said, I'm in 1st grade. And I said, have you ever seen wheelchair basketball? And he said, no. And I said, okay, the Wheelchair Bulls have a game in 2 days at a school not far from here. So I'm going to write it down for you, and you give it to your mom and dad and see if they'll bring it to the game. And he said, okay. 2 nights later, we're warming up for the game. The doors open up, and there's his dad and him pushing him in, and 2 of his sisters. So I waved to him. I was thrilled to see him there. And so we played the game. We played the other Chicago team. We smoked them because we always did. And then after the game, I went to see him. And I said, what do you think? And he's so excited. And he didn't know what to say. And I said, did you have a good time? And he's like, yeah. And I said, do you want to go meet the rest of the players? And he goes, yeah. So I take him to the bench, and all the players are talking to him, and he's just loving it, right? He's loving it. And his sisters are like, Dad, can we go? They want to go home. And he doesn't want to go. He just wants to hang with us. So they finally leave, and I said to Greg, I said, we have got to do more with kids. We just have to. So the next year, we had our first ever, it was called the Day for Kids. So we bring kids in, we have lunch with them, there's wheelchair bulls at every table, and we bring in these kids and their families, we have lunch with them, and then we take them out onto the floor, and we just play, right? It's not a clinic, we're not teaching them anything, we're just playing basketball. Don would go 1-on-5 with the kids, and the kids were so excited to go against him. And for little kids that couldn't even hold a basketball, let alone shoot one, we brought in the little balls and the little baskets for them, and I kind of gravitated to those kids. But it was just such a great day. And then after an hour and a half of that or so, they would take the sidelines and we would play a game. And now we have a gym full of kids in there. So our first kids there, we had 15 kids in this little cracker box gym in York High School. All the kids came through Illinois Spina Bifida, I think. And then each year it got bigger. So by the 7th or 8th year, we had over 100 kids. At our high point, we had 150 kids. And because of that, we launched a junior program with WDSRA and with NEDRA and Northwest Suburban. And in our first year, we had 6 teams, which was the biggest program in the country. That grew to 9 teams the next year, and it was all because of Kids Day. So about 4 years into Kids Day, my brother Tom, who's a big Harley Davidson guy, he's the one with all the hair, jerk, and he says, what if we brought a Harley Davidson to the game, and we'll put the kids in leathers and put a helmet on them, and we'll take a Polaroid picture, we'll give them pictures. And I'm like, okay. Like, I didn't think much of it because I didn't really know how they were going to do it, right? How are they going to get the kids on? But they got big guys with them. They knew what they were doing. They just picked up the kids and put them on the bike. There was always this long line to get their pictures taken. Several years later, one of his buddies is an amateur photographer. So now they have the backgrounds and the big umbrella, all that lighting, everything. And another buddy had a motorcycle with a sidecar. So now you have mom and dads on the motorcycle, kids in the sidecar. They're doing family portraits. Everybody's leaving with a CD of pictures. Always a huge long line for this. I was so wrong. This is why you listen to your older brother. And about 18 months ago, I was in Carroll Stream. I was getting gas. And a guy walks up to me and he goes, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "By any chance, are you Jim Gallo?" And I smiled and I said, "Does he owe you money?" And he just said, "My son loved the wheelchair bulls, and Kids Day was his favorite day of the year." And I'm like, so for me, this is like my biggest win, right? This is all I ever wanted. This is when I wanted to give the kids, and I had as much fun as they did. And I said, "You're making my day." I said, "What's your son's name?" And he said, "Michael," and he gave me his last name. And I said, "What's Michael doing now?" And he got quiet, and he said, "Michael passed away right before his 17th birthday." And now it's not much of a win, right? And he started talking about, he said, every kid got a basketball from Wilson Sporting Goods every year. And he said, in Michael's bedroom, there's like 5 basketballs from 5 kids' days there. And he said, our family picture over our mantle is with the motorcycle on Kids Day. And he said, that was Michael's best day, and he and his wife thought that was the best picture to put up there. And all I could think was, I can't wait to tell my brother this, right? It was just so big and so crap at the same time. So my second kid's story, and my kids have heard the story so many times, they're like, "Dad, really? Dad, do we have to hear it again?" Okay, so this isn't even basketball, and it's not even much to do with me. So I started playing golf in the mid-'90s. And in early 2000, I met this guy who works with disabled golfers all over the country, and he was from Georgia. So he invited me to come down and take lessons with him. So I had a single rider golf cart, so you hold on with one hand, swing one-handed. Anyway, so the next spring, my brother Tom, same one, guy with the hair, the jerk, and my friend Mike, the three of us went down to Georgia and took lessons. And we were there the better part of like 4.5 days. It was so much fun. He made every part of my game better, and I got to learn like these great sayings. And he'd go, Mike, he goes, that ball's already dead. You ain't gotta kill it, right? And anyway, so we come back home, and about a month later, he gives me a call, and he says, listen, our foundation, we're having our golfing fundraiser, and I would love for you to come down to Georgia and play in it. And I said, I'd love to. And he said, the day before that, we have a clinic for kids with disabilities, and I would love for you to come and work with the kids. And I'm like, kids with disabilities? I'm all over that, right? So I get there, at the same golf course, same driving range, and they give me these two little boys. So this one little boy named Henry, 6 years old, Henry's leg was amputated below the knee when he was 11 months old. And the other little boy was the 8-year-old named Adam, and Adam's right arm never grew past his elbow. So I have these two little boys, so Henry's here, Adam's here. Henry, you could tell his dad worked with him because he had his feet just right, practice swing, step up, everything was the same, right? Adam, you're putting the ball down on the tee. Adam's got his arm up like this, right? And you got to put that ball down, and you got to get the hell out of the way, because otherwise you're going to get hit, right? So these two little boys are hitting golf balls, and they're spraying them all over. It was so much fun. And then Adam looks at Henry's prosthetic leg, and he says, hey, he goes, is that Spider-Man on your leg? That is the coolest leg. And little Henry, his face lights up. He gets this huge smile, right? And he gets really excited like he just opened up a Christmas present. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and I got the Hulk back here, and I got Captain America on this side. And now these two little boys are talking all things superheroes and who would win in a fight. And, they're talking as they're swinging. They don't care, right? It was just so much fun to watch these two little boys be little boys, right? So then after a few minutes, Henry looks at Adam's arm, and he says, what happened to your arm? And Adam just looked at him, and he said, God didn't give me one. And then Henry goes, oh. And then they went back to hitting golf balls and talking superheroes, right? And I mean, other than my wedding day and the birth of my two kids, this is like my favorite day, because these little boys are just being little boys. And the thing that they have in common now, the thing that makes them self-conscious, the thing that makes other people self-conscious around them, the thing that gets them, teased or bullied, now this is the thing that gets them in the club, right? This is the thing, now they know that they're not alone anymore. They're not the only one. And this is exactly what happens in the programs at WDSRA. You put people together that have a disability or similar disabilities, and now they're making friends, and that's the magic of WDSRA. This is what happens. And there are two moms were sitting on a bench behind me, and they were talking, and you could tell they had never met, and I don't think they had ever met another mom that had a child that was an amputee or missing a limb, and you could tell that they were like exchanging notes, and so it does as much for them, I think, as it did for the boys. But this is again, one of my favorite days. When you work with kids with disabilities, you have to know that sometimes you're going to get bad news, right? That little boy at the beginning, Jamie Williams, that poor kid, he works for the White Sox. I love that one. My teammates are huge White Sox fans, so this is great. Okay, so before I wrap up, I'm going to take you back to January 5th, my accident, for a minute. So I'm at Northwest Community Hospital, and my parents arrive, and the docs read off this laundry list of injuries. And they said, we're taking him into the surgery, and then we're going to airlift him to Chicago to Northwestern. So you, if you want, you can leave now. You can drive down to Northwestern. If you have a family priest, you should think about calling him, which they did. So they go down to Northwestern, and they arrive. I'm in intensive care, and so the priest goes in where I am, and the docs are talking to my mom and dad. And they confirmed to my parents that I have a spinal cord injury and I'm going to be paralyzed. And so now, as you heard on the thing, now the waiting starts. And my mom had told me a long time ago that, now remember, this is 1980 again, so nobody knows anything about resources or like, can you go to college and all that kind of stuff. And my mom had told me that her and my dad thought that there was a chance that I just might be living at home for the rest of my life, right? They didn't know if I could go back to college. They didn't know, like, if somebody was going to give me a job, and if you're in a wheelchair, what kind of jobs can you do, right? This is not 2025, this is 1980. And, you know, same thing with getting married. Didn't know if I'd ever get married. Thought that my friends would probably just, you know, go away to college, get married, move away. And I would just be left behind. And I thought, as I was like strolling down memory lane for this presentation, this speech, I thought, how great would it be if, you know, in It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart says that the world would have been better had he never been born. And then he's visited by Clarence, his guardian angel, and Clarence shows him what would have happened had he never been born. And I thought, how great would it be if I had my own guardian angel, but not for me, for my parents, right? Because I think when you have, especially when you have a traumatic injury, but maybe for all disabilities, I think it's harder on the parents than it is on me in this case, because your parents look at you and they always think you're struggling. And we figure it out, right? We figure out how to do things. It's not a struggle. It looks like a struggle. But your parents, no parent wants to watch their kids struggle. And I thought, so how great would it be if the guardian angel could show my parents, like, what my life would have been like, or what it was going to be like, and then they wouldn't have to worry. So here's how that conversation would go. This is a tough one. So he's going to sit him down, and he's going to, look, I know this is terrible news. I know this is every parent's worst nightmare. But I'm telling you that I can see your son's future, and your son's going to have a great life, and he's going to get everything he's ever wanted. Starting with, he's going to go away to college. He's going to get his degree, and he's going to have a great career. The athlete in your son never leaves him. So he's going to become a wheelchair athlete. He's going to work harder at it than anything he's ever worked at before. He's going to play on the biggest stages. He's going to have great highs and some low lows. He's going to have teammates that are like brothers. And when games are over and he and his teammates are on the sidelines, little kids in wheelchairs are going to ask him for his autograph. The friends that you're worried about, his friends from kindergarten and third grade, from high school and college, mentors, neighbors, family friends, never leave him. In fact, my boss has blessed your son with so many friends, and the only way that he'll ever be able to tell them how much they mean to him is if he gets to speak at a banquet one night when they're out here. Your son's going to find love. He's going to find a woman that's just perfect for him. They're going to have a great life together. And not to be a spoiler, but they're going to give you grandkids. And they are kids that they are proud of every single day of their lives. And finally, And finally, his family, starting with you two. I know you think your son is broken and you want to fix him, and you can't. But what you do for your son from now until you leave this earth can't be measured. You never treated him like he was fragile. If he fell down, you made him get up. You supported him in everything he ever did. You were in the stands for his games, and you made every place he's ever lived easier for him. Your son could never make it without you. And finally, his brothers, the boys that fought every day as kids, the boys that made you rethink that whole Catholic birth control thing. His brothers are his best friends. Life with a disability can be tough. And there are times your son's going to go to a place that's dark, and all he has to do is call his brothers. They are always there for him, and they never let him down. So I promise you, your son's going to have a great life, and he's going to get everything he's ever wanted. For you parents here with a kid with disabilities, with a child with a disability, I promise you that your child's going to have a great life. And I know this because you're here, because you support WD, because you put your child in programs where they get to be with people just like themselves. And in those programs, they get to build friendships and bonds that last a lifetime. They get to be part of something bigger than themselves, and they get to be included. And that's all we want. So I promise you that your child's going to have a great life. I have been involved with WD for more than 2 decades. I have been a volunteer, and I've been a coach. I've helped with this event, and I've been on the foundation board. I love this organization. This is where my heart is, and this is where my money goes. And the people who run these programs, right, the people that are working with these folks with disabilities and giving them a bridge to wherever they're going, right, and making their world bigger. These program people are proof that not all superheroes wear capes. And their superpowers are empathy and kindness and patience. They just rock. They just do. So thank you. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for supporting WD. And thank you for giving me part of your night. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Gallo.